they are probably the most objective, have the least axe to grind, and are coming from the most neutral place and are the most thorough. And you were saying, Jim, also the Illinois State Bar Association may not be as large or as thorough, but they actually have the least axe to grind. But if you look at the rest, it's kind of obvious that each one's got its own prejudice, whether it's the Hellenic, which is Greek, or whether it's Asian, which is whatever group that is, because Asia is an awfully big word, the Decalogue, which is Jewish. You've got black, and you've got black women, and then you've got a women's, and you've got a gay and lesbian, and there's got to be some Latin one that I can't think of the name exactly.
There's a Hispanic Bar Association, yeah.
And I'm probably leaving stuff out, but no one's going to tell me that that usually the gays and lesbians will get a slightly better grade from gay and lesbians, the Greeks will get a slightly better grade from Greeks, etc. It's the way it usually works. And there may not be a built-in prejudice, but, you know, like, why else are they there? Why do you need all these bar associations?
Well, a lot of the bar associations, Avi, are you know, just a commonality. They may be, people have an ethnicity in common, people have, you know, a gender in common, or something of that nature. And, you know, I think they serve a useful purpose, because the good thing is you're hearing from all segments of the community. If a particular bar association, you know, the Chicago Bar Association is kind of every lawyer in Chicago who joins it. Now, not all lawyers in Chicago do. But I think you're correct in saying they probably perform the most in-depth reviews before candidates are submitted for evaluation. The State Bar Association is very good, although their focus is statewide, so they might not have exactly the laser focus that some of the local bar associations will have. But I think in all, what I would recommend to people is you will get these bar associations ratings across the board with all the different bar associations. You can look at them all, and in generally speaking, if there are 12 bar associations and a particular candidate gets a recommended or a qualified or a highly qualified by all those, that's a pretty good indication that all the various components of the bar who have looked at this person believe that they have good qualifications to be a judge. And, you know, there's going to be people who get 10 out of 12 or get, you know, 9 out of 12 or something like that. And, you know, you have to take that and say, well, maybe they had a bad day, or, you know, maybe this bar association didn't have as much information about them as another one. But as a general rule, I think if you look at all the bar association ratings and you see somebody who in the vast majority is rated well, that's a candidate you can have a pretty good feeling about in terms of knowing that they would make a good judge if they were elected.
Yeah, the yardstick I used for Jewish Chicago was I gave the Chicago Bar Association the most weight. Then I looked at the alliance as a whole, and because it's a Jewish paper, I had the Decalogue Society as the third part, which is the Jewish Bar Association. It was interesting to me because, you know, I'm a layman. The same judge could get a highly qualified and a not recommended, which was really interesting. Also, what's interesting is sometimes all the good judges gravitated toward one race. Like there were at least 2 races, I think maybe even 3, where there were 3 people with such good qualifications that I don't want to choose between them. And then there's races that are lame. And I don't understand why in some races there's nobody running against somebody. Like, I understand in the terms of Lucy Liu, because she's got everybody's support, a ton of money.
Laura Liu.
Laura Liu, I'm sorry, and yeah, and sympathy, besides because she's not doing well, but hopefully she'll be healthy and all that. But some of the other people, I don't understand how they're not opposed. And just because somebody has clout in the judicial community, that doesn't mean you're going to come across well with voters. And I would think, like, why are there 4 Jews in one race? It makes me nuts. Okay, and then you've got other races in that sub-circuit where there aren't any. And you've got people running unopposed without that kind of money or clout. It's kind of a crap roll in some ways.
Well, you know, there's no particular rule as to what races people get into. They get into races for different reasons. Laura Liu, I know personally, she's a tremendously talented attorney when she was practicing. She got, across the board, the highest bar ratings you could get. And everybody that has been in front of her comes away with a very good impression. She's doing very well, and there are some races where people just look at that and say, you know what, this candidate has so much going for them, I don't want to take the chance of running against somebody like that. I would rather jump into another race, even if there's 5 more people in the race, and take my chances that way. The other thing is, there was a change in the law this year regarding how people could file. In the past, if you were deciding to run, say, for a circuit judgeship, you could, if there were 5 vacancies countywide, you could circulate petitions, file in all 5 vacancies, wait and see who else got into what vacancy, and then there was a period of time before you had to withdraw from all but 1 vacancy. So in the past election cycles, you saw more people who filed in a lot of different vacancies, kind of got the lay of the land, made decisions based on who else was in the race and what race they thought they could run the strongest in. And
each and every bar association that considered my credentials. The Chicago Council of Lawyers said that I was considered to have good legal ability and have substantial legal experience in more complex litigation matters in both state and federal court, and that I am praised for my professionalism. I certainly am honored to have those statements made by me by the Chicago Council of Lawyers and the Chicago Tribune, and I can promise your listeners and voters that if I'm elected, I will continue to make those tough decisions for the people in Cook County.
well, Judge, talking about endorsements, I read this past week in the paper you got a very interesting endorsement from the entertainment community.
It kind of broke up a little bit, Jim. So you're talking about Jane Lynch?
That's correct.
Yeah, Jane Lynch is a family friend. We've been admiring her work for many years, both as her role in the movies and certainly her significant role in the Glee. I am just really proud and honored that she is supporting my candidacy.
Well, you certainly seem to be leading the Hollywood vote, huh?
You never know.
Well, Judge, I know it's about a week out from the election day. Any thoughts about what you're going to be doing for the next week?
You know, what I learned best, Jim, is that, you know, I have my plans of what I'm going to do. I just kind of do it on a day-to-day basis. I'm going to hit as many events that I can, both political and non-political. Believe it or not, this is my third parade this weekend, and there's a parade after this one in Tinley Park. So I'm grateful for the wonderful weather, but it also forces you to get outside and walk.
How many pairs of shoes have you gone through so far?
Yeah, I'm going to be like, who was that old politician who had the bottom of his shoes with the holes in them?
Adlai Stevenson.
Yeah.
Well, Judge, we want to wish you luck. We appreciate you taking the time from your parades to check in with us. And what is your punch number on the ballot?
My punch number is 152.
Well, thank you, Judge. Good luck. Have fun at the parades today. And we'll be looking forward to seeing the results on election night.
Yes, and thank you so much. And Avi and Jim, we certainly appreciate the fact that you work with the judges to try and get the word out, because the educated voter is the voters we're looking for.
Well, Judge Horan, you're a really fine person. It was a pleasure to be able to meet you during the election and have you on the show twice. I think you're a terrific guy, and I want to wish you all the luck in the world.
Thank you both very much.
All the very best.
Have a good day. Thank you.
So I'm going to anticipate, and it was good to hear from him, and he's a good man, and he's another man who's in, I'm not going to get specific about it, but you know what, there's so many good candidates out there, you'd like to see all of them become judges, that's for sure. We probably won't have Dorothy Brown if she hasn't called in at this point. But you know what, I want to get back to some of the things we were talking about before with the various candidates in the elections, and I mean, I don't really necessarily want to get into specifics, because I don't know certain things, but I can understand where in the case of a Lucy Liu, she's running unopposed. Some of the others, though, you know, we'll save that for another time. But you've got more races than ever. You've got, and the non-election thing really bothers me. By the way, for people who are interested, the Supreme Court is available on web now. You can actually catch it, and I actually got to see how they operate, which is not the same as you might think from Law and Order, by the way. And you can even see Jim Nally on it. And
well, yeah, Avi, it's interesting. Our appellate courts for 20 years or more have been televised. The thing is, the cameras in the courtroom now are also coming to the trial courts in Illinois. The Supreme Court recently authorized a pilot project where circuits throughout the state can request that they be allowed to participate. And I know there are at least a couple of circuits right now that have requested that they be made part of the pilot project to see how cameras in the courtroom would work. Now, up till now, you've been able to see our appellate courts and the Supreme Court. You mentioned in January I had the privilege of arguing a case down in Springfield before our Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court website has the video of all the oral arguments that take place before the Supreme Court. So if you're ever interested, you can go to the Illinois Supreme Court website and click on the link to the oral argument videos, and you can see virtually every argument before the Illinois Supreme Court, not live on video, but recorded on video.
Left-hand side of the page, by the way, and it is pretty cool.
But the interesting thing is Illinois has not had. Now, people are familiar with trials such as the O.J. trial and some of these very high-profile ones. California has had cameras in their trial courts for many years and allowed actual trials to be televised, and many states across the United States have done that. Illinois has not been one of those. However, this pilot project is starting, and I was just reading in the Law Bulletin the other day that there's a case out in the western part of the state of Illinois, and I don't remember the circuit, which will probably be the first criminal case to be televised come April. And that will be available to TV stations if they want to run it. Certainly, my guess is cable access will probably pick up some of these trials, and I'm sure they'll be accessible over the internet. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that works here in Illinois, and I'm assuming that if it works out well, that it'll spread to all the circuits in the state of Illinois, and eventually virtually any trial would be on television.
And for those of you who, and I don't watch court TV, and I think they're picky about what cases they pick also, and don't have a general variety. The first time I actually sat in a courtroom as a reporter, and I mean I wasn't the guy taking down the notes for the court, but working for a newspaper, I couldn't believe how different it was than what my impressions were. I was like in a different universe from where I thought I was going to be. So it's very different. And once again, it's so important with the judicial elections. Start at the bottom of the ballot. 40% of people don't vote for judges. And you know what? You can go to Jewish Chicago on the web and show the cover, please, at www.ntnm.org. It's available in its entirety on my website, aviworld.com, that I don't know anywhere as much as I should with. And of course, this show and all the other shows, we interviewed over 3 dozen judges this time. And it's all available on YouTube. And you know, you can access that by going to Sonny Hirsch's website at www.ntnm.org. And it's really been very interesting along those lines to hear from them and learn. And you know, they're a better breed of people than the regular politicians, and I haven't had to use anywhere near as many Q-tips as I have in the past. And you know, if you want to subscribe to Sonny, you can go to YouTube and get on Sonny HTV, and over there you can, you know, subscribe. And because after the election, we're going to take off politics a while and go to some very worthwhile community organizations. Of course, we'll still be a little bit political, can't help that, but and we try to be as fair and square as we can. And for your future information too, any judge that approached me up until our last filming that I had room for a slot, I invited. Okay, at that point, you know, like, stations usually would be taking much more shows at this point. We did 6 extra shows, which you can catch also. Our show's also on in Evanston, and it's on in 30 and 35 suburbs, and that's the regular show, Northtown News Magazine, which is on in Chicago at Thursday at 7:30, Friday 2:30. Matter of fact, there's a really good show with, you know, Jim Nally earlier in the year, where we talk about some of the changes in the laws this year, as well as this one. We haven't talked about you coming on. If you want to do a post-election show, we can discuss that later, because he's a very busy guy, so it's not always available. Are there any races that you in particular have your own, like, what races do you want to see people vote for the most? I mean, do you have favorite candidates this time around in judicial, or being a lawyer and being in your position, you'd rather not say?
Well, you know what, I just hope people vote. I was a little disconcerted. I spoke to an election official on Friday, and they tell me that they think the turnout is going to be very, very low. They're talking maybe 20 or 25%. And they have a pretty good gauge now, because the early voting, which we've had now for a while, and of course the no-fault absentee, where now you don't have to give a reason to get an absentee ballot. You can just say, send one in the mail. But the requests for absentees are down, and the requests, or the people who are actually coming into the early voting sites to vote are down as well. And it's a little disconcerting to me, because as I said, we're going to elect a record number of judges this cycle. By the time we're done here in Cook County, out of something over 200 circuit judges that make up the Cook County Circuit Court that are elected by the people, we're probably talking about electing almost 30 or 40 positions. So it's an enormous number of judges who will be coming onto the bench, who will be there. And again, as I said earlier in the program, that every one of us as citizens is going to probably encounter at some point in our lives. So we've got a week till the election. If you haven't voted, you know, really think about it. It's not that much time out of your day. And people like Avi, who do yeoman service in terms of bringing the candidates onto television, onto YouTube, where you can watch them, you can hear what they have to say, you can make you know, a good evaluation. Jewish Chicago, where they discuss candidates in depth, talk about their positions and their qualifications. There's a ton of good information out there that can make you an informed voter. But if you don't go out and vote, it doesn't matter.
No, it's very important. It's so. By the way, I have my own gauge too, which is how many issues of Jewish Chicago get picked up. And because it's interesting, because in the beginning I was like, oh my goodness, nobody cares this time around. And you know what? I got all the right pictures on the cover. I got the presidential candidates. You know, it's funny. It's like people say, oh, Obama, I'll pick it up. Oh, Romney, I'll pick it up. Oh, Santorum. Yuck. And I'm not singling out Santorum for the ugh, but you know, just the way. But people look at that, and that's how they pick it up. But now they're starting to really go. And I made the rounds Friday, and it's like all of a sudden it's like, uh-oh, I got to put more copies in the car next time. So yeah, as a matter of fact, this Monday, tomorrow, you know, we're going to do our final run, and we're going to run out of copies. I'm going to try to save 500 because there's always people last minute who want to get a hold of some copies. There's some candidates who want to pass them out. I've even got a candidate's mother passing them out. That's the truth, you know, and so you can always get a hold of me if you'd like some copies of the paper, because they're going to be gone from most of the stands, and they're going to be going pretty quick because people are paying attention right now. And actually over the years too, I've learned where people are going to pick up the papers and where people are interested in politics.
And if they can't actually pick up a hard copy, Avi, there's also online access?
Online at www.aviworld.com. Your entire paper, ads and all, is going to be there, and I'm going to make that. I'm going to make the one difference. I'm going to make that correction with Thomas Ostrayan to mention that he's Jewish in there, and I feel bad about that, and I'm sorry, Tom. You can also find links to it on the show website at ntnm.org, which stands for Northtown News Magazine. But yeah, you can find the whole thing. There's actually 11,460 words, and I guess now there'll be 11,468 or whatever it is when I add the Ostrayan stuff. That's the beauty of computers. You can look at the counter and see all that stuff. And there's actually, you know what counts too? People don't think about it sometimes. But you know what? From a Jewish paper standpoint, who puts in an ad and who doesn't? And I'm not going to single anybody out. You got to look at the paper to see. Makes a statement too on who wants to be in what paper. And the same holds true if it's an Irish paper or if it's an African American paper or a Hellenic paper. You know, the judges that are looking to court the Jewish vote, the people looking to court the Jewish vote, are going to put in ads. And this year we had about 30 ads from political sources, and 28 of them were judicial. And that really shocked me like there was no tomorrow. And the other two, just for the record, were Dorothy Brown and Tom Morris, who's running for the Republican committeeman of the 50th Ward. So, you know, the 28 judges, I'm not going to try to name because I couldn't. I don't want to leave people out. And I mean, thank you for all the interest. I'm really glad you did, and it's very much appreciated. You know, in terms of the other races, it's like I'm going to take a Democratic ballot because of the judges. I consider that primary.
It's actually interesting because there are not a lot of contested races other than judicial races in the Democratic primary this cycle in Cook County. Anita Alvarez is running unopposed.
I'm crazy about her, by the way. She is the one person. It's kind of funny. I can look her in the eye the same way I can look my friends in the eye. Not that I do it that often. But you know what? And no, she's being honest and upfront with me. And that's something, you're not supposed to get elected office if you can do that. That's supposed to be against the rules.
Well, you know, if you remember Anita's background, Anita was a prosecutor in that office, and she's one of the top prosecutors in terms of taking on some of the very toughest cases that the office had. So she's not a career politician by any means. She's first and foremost a real lawyer, a real prosecutor. And that comes true, I think, Avi, when you're talking to her. You can sense that the professionalism that she has is really heads and tails above a lot of other people.
You know, and I'll tell you something too, when you meet her staff, like her two key people seem to be Dan Kirk and Sally Daly Hunt. These are exceptionally fine people who are very serious about doing a good job and are nice people.
Well, you know, water seeks its own level, and I think if you've got somebody who's a quality person as an elected official, they're going to surround themselves with good people as well. And both those people are really top-notch at what they do.
No, they really are, and it's such a pleasure to deal with them, and it's so different than dealing with so many of the other people that I'm not going to be specific about mentioning or not mentioning. But yeah, I mean, Dorothy Brown's in a contested race, and you know, I interviewed them both. Ricardo Munoz seems like a decent enough guy, but to me, running an office of 1,900 people, you have to be a little bit better than just like, you know, an alderman who runs a staff of 7 or 6 or 5 or whatever it is. It's not the same as running an office with 1,900 people. One of the things that I did this time around is I interviewed over 20 different judges and judicial type people and people from offices that have to deal on a regular basis with Dorothy Brown's office. Because I've heard things over the years, and I wanted to know from them. You know, and it was great having access to the judicial community for this. Do they think that Dorothy Brown was doing a good job? And, you know, would they vote for her? But nobody's name comes out here. I interviewed a little over 20 people. All but 2 really thought she was doing a good job. It really surprised me. the numbers were that high, but they talked about the professionalism of her people. Feel free to disagree if you've been in court lately. I haven't. But, you know, and they talked about, you know, how things do move where they're supposed to move. So in that particular case, which is the only contested case, you know, that's who I'm voting for. And up in the ninth, I didn't mention Larry Axelrod, but I really like Larry Axelrod a lot too. And the two signs you'll find on my lawn right now are for Michael Bender, who I consider the single most important person, and for Judge Larry Axelrod. And in that particular case, I have to say I really like Mary True a lot. And, you know, that's not to negate the other candidates in those races either. But you know what? I'm going with Judge Michael Bender and Judge Larry Axelrod in those particular cases.
Yeah, those are two really good choices, two very qualified people who have very good records as judges. And you know, I want to emphasize there are a lot of races that people are going to see where there are many well-qualified candidates. So it's not a situation in most of the judicial races where there's one person who's qualified and the other people really aren't. There are a lot of races, as you mentioned, where you're going to come across people, probably in some races, every single candidate who has excellent bar ratings, has a very good reputation as a lawyer, as a judge. But that's a good problem to have, isn't it? That you can pick amongst really good qualified people who are going to sit on the bench. There's
one race where there's three candidates, and I think the world of all three of them. And I'm going to throw a dart, basically, when it comes election day. You know what, one man I want to mention also that I really like a lot, if you missed him earlier in the show, is Judge James Kaplan in the 8th Sub-Circuit. The 8th Sub-Circuit is basically from a little north of Devon by the lake all the way down to 26th Street. And he is a really warm, caring, exceptional person. He's even taken care of a special needs child by himself at his age, which isn't the easiest thing in the world to do. He's really distinguished himself on the bench. He's getting tons of endorsements, and he's really thought highly of by the entire judicial legal community. Oh, and by the way, when you read JLC, you know, in Jewish Chicago, it's not Justice League of Chicago or anything like that from the Superman comics. No, it's judicial legal community. So we can't spell it out each time. We need the space.
Yeah, it's Judge Kaplan is a very well qualified man, and actually one of the nicest, most professional people I have met. He's just got a very calm demeanor, very patient, a good listener, and that's what you need in a judge.
No, absolutely. And you know, there's more people I really want to mention, and then I start remembering, oh, you know what? There's this guy in this race, but yeah, the guy running against him is so good. But then again, you've got races where not so good.
Well, you know what I'm hoping is in this cycle, Avi, is because we have very few contested races outside the judicial races, that people pay a little more attention, because as we've talked about throughout the whole program, these are people who are going to have a direct impact on most people's lives at some point. And you know, this is your opportunity to pick good people to fill those roles. And I'm hopeful that because the judicial races, by and large, are the only contested races on the board, that people can take the time and look at Jewish Chicago and programs like this and the Bar Association ratings, which are all out there, and get educated and you know, make good choices.
And go to the bottom of the ballot first this time around. Because you know what, you're going to want to hit the president one way or another. And by the way, unfortunately, you can't exactly vote in the Republican race and then vote for the judges. You're not going to find anybody in the city of Chicago running as a Republican for judge, if I'm not mistaken.
That's
oh,
correct. There is one candidate running for the Supreme Court.
So yeah, there is something. Anyway, listen, at this point, I want to thank Keith McDonald. I'm sorry I forgot your last name temporarily. They changed the clock today. I've had less sleep. Sonny Hirsch, our producer, of course. I want to thank Tyler and Kevin over in cable casting. I want to thank Leslie and Terrence. And I want to thank Joe and Amari, who are there for us during the year for the regular show. Jim, it's always a pleasure. I look forward to this very much. This is going to be on the internet later today, on YouTube, and it'll be on, and we have a whole bunch of election shows coming out in Chicago and Evanston and in the northern suburbs, so stay tuned for them. We want to thank everybody for joining us. ntnm.org for the show, aviworld.com. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.